So this is the group of people that will be talking to you today, and we'll just do a quick round of introductions, and I guess since I'm talking, I'll start. So if you missed it, I'm Dr. Liz Eckelkamp. I'm the Dairy Extension Specialist here in Tennessee and the new lead for the Dairy Business Innovation Initiatives Grant, which would not have been possible without the wonderful previous leadership of Mr. Hal Pepper. And Hal, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. Yes, I'm Hal Pepper. I'm with the Center for Profitable Agriculture. I'm a financial analysis specialist there. And yeah, really excited about the opportunities that are available with this Dairy Business Innovation Initiatives project. Have been pleased to get to lead that, and a tremendous, awesome team that's working with us on that. And Liz has been a major part of that from the get-go. So I'm really excited about the opportunities that are going to be available with this under Liz's leadership.
Jennifer, you're next on my screen. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Hickerson. I'm with the Kentucky Dairy Development Council, and I'm a dairy consultant in the northern region.
Jennifer is going to be the face of the Dairy Business Innovation Initiative over in Kentucky. She's going to be the main point of contact. We are very grateful she's signed on for all these responsibilities. Don't run away, Jennifer, you're stuck now. Kyle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kyle Hensley. I'm with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. I am going to be helping Liz and Hal and their team on distributing the grants, the Dairy Business Innovation Grants to Tennessee recipients. So happy to be here and happy to be a part of this.
Stephanie?
Yep, I'm Stephanie Ward, and I'm the Dairy Extension Specialist at NC State, and I see that my background is reversed, so I'll fix that in a second. Back when, I don't remember when it started, but Hal reached out to us with interest in collaborating on this, and we have quite a few on-farm processors and people interested in it in North Carolina, so we're excited to work with you guys on this.
And Stephanie is our face of the Dairy Business Innovation Initiatives in North Carolina. And we could actually see your screen just fine, Stephanie. I think it's because you have it set to mirror on yours, so it looks like the state extension backwards. I did that in a meeting with the UTA logo, and they're like, well, you're fine. I'm like, well, okay, thanks, guys. So we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of update you on what's going to be going on across the 3 states, and hopefully clear up any confusion between the phase 1 and phase 2, which is how I have to refer to it, so I know what's going on here versus what we're doing across the other 3 states. So the main prongs of all of these are very similar. So a big focus of both phase 1 and phase 2 are dairy producer subawards. So grants that all of our producer processors in Tennessee or in Tennessee, Kentucky, and North Carolina can apply for to help try to do product innovation, sometimes purchase equipment, do any of those feasibility studies that David was just mentioning. So anything to help look at how well you could do a value-added enterprise off of your operation, or to enhance an existing value-added enterprise on your operation. And that could be adding a new product, adding a new processing type, or trying to increase the reach of your current product line, or have more regional milk involved in what you're already doing. So, but the big main key is that you have to be processing or marketing some kind of dairy product. It can't just be milking cattle. There has to be some additional use of that across the 3 states. So for the first one, phase 1, that is just for Tennessee producers. And that's what we're working with Kyle Hensley and TDA on, as far as rolling out that application. That application did become live on Wednesday. We are very excited. It is out there. It can be applied for. And the good thing about having that out for our Tennessee guys is we expect that application to look very similar for our Kentucky and North Carolina guys as well, once we get that application done. Now, it's not done yet, I know, and the big question is, when is it going to be done? Hopefully by the end of next spring is when it will be done. We're all working very hard. We've got a great team of people working together on this to try to get that done as quickly as possible. But we will keep all of you in the loop as that comes out. So Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about TDA's role with the application?
Absolutely. And I think this is a good opportunity to talk about a program that Dr. Hughes mentioned in his last presentation as well, the Ag Enterprise Fund, because both programs are going to operate pretty similarly as far as the nuts and bolts of how TDA is going to handle applications. And so as Dr. Eckelkamp mentioned, the for Tennessee producers, it is live. It is there's an online website that we've created that she can share. I can share it with you. I also have the PDF that I can send to anybody separately. It is a fillable PDF. The first 8 pages are the directions, the frequently asked questions, and kind of the background information for the application, what you can apply for, certain definitions that are going to be beneficial. So it's really one document that should guide you through the application process and then give you the opportunity to apply. Like I said, the application, it's a fillable PDF, so you should be able to go in there, save it to your computer, type in the boxes, save it on, and so you don't have to start and finish it at the same time. You can work on it over some time, and we encourage you to do so, and obviously encourage you to work very closely with Dr. Eckelkamp and Hal and others who are a part of this team to make sure that you're in the right direction. Once the application is finalized, once you finish filling it out, you'll either email it directly to me, or there is a mailing address. We're going to actually send it to campus in Knoxville. Either one is going to work just fine. The group will then evaluate those applications, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's February 15th, right? Is that the date we're looking at to start the evaluation process? So for going forward, one of the really important aspects to understand about the way this grant is going to work is it cannot fund anything that you have already done. It is a forward-moving program. So if you apply now or in January, don't try to go out and spend your money hoping to get reimbursed for it. You have to be approved. You have to be selected, approved. Once the committee gets together, they'll select the recipients. The recipients will then be in contact with me. We'll have to create a contract with the state of Tennessee. I know it sounds super kind of scary. It's really not. It's just the means that we have to get you your money. We'll complete a contract. You'll have to do what's called a W-9 form, which is just basically identifying yourself via your tax ID number. And if you'd like to do direct deposit, we can do a direct deposit form, and that way you're not waiting on a paper check to come in the mail. We'll complete all that paperwork. You're still not ready. Once you fill out that paperwork, you're still not ready. That has to come back to TDA to be approved on our end, to get the appropriate signatures on our end. And then once you are approved, you will hear directly from me or somebody else on the team. You are approved. You can move forward and spend your money. We want to be very clear about that. I would hate for somebody to go out and spend some money hoping to get reimbursed before the process is complete. Now, once you're approved, the process is very straightforward. Once you're approved, the contract is finalized. You have the approval to move forward and spend your money. From there, you go out and you do it. Whatever it is, the feasibility study, equipment, whatever it is you're going to go forth and do, all we need back is a dated invoice. We'll take that dated invoice, and then there's a real easy form to fill out. We'll fill that out, and then it'll go through the process. It should not take very long for you to get approved once that comes back. Really, the biggest thing is the timing on when you get that to us. The closer we get to the end of the fiscal year, which is in June, the longer it's going to take, because our finance and administration people are pretty maxed out as the fiscal year ends. But if you get that to me in April, May, something like that, it should be pretty easy for us to reimburse you. It should not take very long at all. I'd say a couple weeks. And so, yeah, you can move forward and go on and do that. I think that we've talked about, it can be in chunks, right? If you're approved for, $25,000 and it needs to come in small chunks as different pieces of equipment come in, that's okay from a TDA perspective. That process, like I mentioned, is the exact same process for the Ag Enterprise Fund that Dr. Hughes mentioned in his previous presentation. I just want to say a real quick word on that. That program was a casualty of COVID-19 and the state financial situation we're in right now. We hope that their funds are go back to that account, and that program is live again starting in July at the beginning of the fiscal year. But we will not know until the governor releases his budget and then the legislator passes his budget, what that's going to look like. So in the short term, through the first half of the year, that Ag Enterprise Fund is not really available, but we hope and anticipate that it will be available in the second half of the year as a supplement. It's completely different from what we're talking about here, but it's another source of funding for Tennessee producers that we have at TDA. So I think I've covered everything, but I'm more than happy to answer any specific questions, or Liz or Hal, if I've missed anything, please let me know.
Thanks, Kyle. So as we mentioned, that sub-award program is only one of the main prongs that we're doing, and that's going to be a joint effort for phase 2 between us, North Carolina, and Kentucky. So for that, we're going to actually have those funds distributed through my department, through me. So it's going to be a similar application. Everything's going to come here. We're going to coordinate with Jennifer and Stephanie and whoever else we find in North Carolina to help us with that, Stephanie. And we'll make sure that we have a process that's very similar with a quick turnaround as soon as we get all that stuff finalized on our end. And so I have a lot of searches to do in my future, is what this is telling you all. So the other 2 prongs that we have are actually going out and working with all of our producer processors across the 3 states and trying to get some information from you about your value-added journey, your value-added enterprise, and build a little bit more information for people who are interested in the future to go and reference that information. And that's going to be a big prong of our field audits. That's something that I've been taking leadership of here in Tennessee. So it is basically a walkthrough of your dairy business. So if you have a dairy farm, we ask you questions about your dairy farm. If you have a processing plant, we ask you questions about that, about what your marketing looks like, and some about equipment purchases and financials, not because we want to tie your name to it, but because we're trying to build a larger database. As David and Mark both kind of talked about in their presentations, there's a lot of variability in the pricing that's out there, and there's not a lot of great databases, and any of you that are looking to get into value added have probably figured that out already. So one of the things we're trying to do through this is help build out that database. The next one that we're really working on hard is the dairy gauge program. And that is, again, going to be between the 3 states. And some of our Tennessee guys may already be familiar with that. And what that is looking at the financial health of your dairy farm operation. And we've discussed doing a similar one looking at the dairy business side, but right now the dairy farm gauge is for the dairy farm. And what we do is we have some of our awesome people from the Manage program in our Ag Econ department come out and walk you through your dairy farm financials. So looking at feed costs, looking at equipment costs, looking at supplies, looking at labor, looking at veterinary bills, and also looking at the milk check income and trying to figure out what are some of the areas that are maybe making your operation a little bit less financially efficient than it really could be. This is all completely confidential. Your results don't go anywhere but your farm, except in the aggregate, and that's only if you allow us to. Nothing about that is going to go anywhere without your knowledge or without your consent, and all of that happens on the individual level with your farm operation. And that's something that Jennifer and the guys at KDDC are going to be heavily involved in. So do you want to tell our Tennessee guys a little bit about KDDC and what it is that y'all do?
KDDC is a producer organization, and we basically, our goal is to help sustain the dairy industry in Kentucky. So we work with different organizations across the state to accomplish that for our producers. And we have 4 consultants that is broken up into 4 different regions across the state.
We're having trouble hearing you, Jennifer. Can you get a little bit closer to your computer?
Yes, I can. Now, is that better?
A little bit. It's still a little hard to hear you.
I think it might be my speaker and not closeness because I don't know how close I can get. But okay, how's this? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Okay, I'll just restart. How's that?
That's perfect.
ADDC is an organization, it's a producer organization that was created in 2005. Our goal and objective is to sustain the viability of the dairy industry within the state. We help producers through really a variety of different areas to do that. We have 4 consultants that are broken up into different regions across the state. We work with different partners and all the organizations that are involved with dairy across the state. Also to do that. So that's our main purpose.
Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, you want to kind of highlight NC State's role? I know I kind of already did the cliff notes, but if you want to talk a little bit more about what y'all are planning to do with the dairy gauge and the on-farm audits, anything to add to what I already said?
Yeah, so we, just for those of you who may not be familiar with our programs, and I saw some questions about the Southeast Dairy Foods Research Center in the chat. So the picture actually behind me is our Lake Wheeler Dairy Farm, and that is our campus dairy that sends milk to our on-campus creamery. And we've actually just opened up a store on the farm as well, which COVID, as with a lot of people, and I'm sure those of you with value-added operations have experienced, COVID put a damper on the selling of ice cream and the gathering to eat it. But we, our goal is, we actually have the manager of our educational program there at the dairy is going to be the one that's going to lead our effort on doing the on-farm audits, along with a current, almost finished graduate student of mine who works at the dairy as well. And so they'll be primarily the ones going out and meeting with producers and getting that information. And then I have another colleague, Brittany Whitmire, who we were all in a training this morning that I left early, so Brittany might be on here in a few minutes, but is our ag farm business management person on our extension team. And she's been working with the folks at Tennessee and Kentucky on the dairy gauge program, and has a few farms enrolled in that already, and is looking for more people to participate in that and collect information from. So we, we're lucky in the sense here that we have the creamery and we have sort of this on-farm processing set up, and as an example, and an open, I hope open communication anyway to producers who are looking to make this move or looking for new products or something like that to happen. And we hope to be that resource for anybody, not just in North Carolina, but around the region. We just started making butter. We found ourselves with a whole lot of cream. When you can't sell as much ice cream, you got to do something with all the fat that you make. So, I think a lot of people have probably had to punt and deliver some new products in 2020 and figure that stuff out. So hopefully we can be a resource for people that are having to go through that part as well.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Sure.
So we've kind of given all of y'all a brief overview of what we're going to try to be doing over the next 3 years. Are there any questions from all of the attendees that you might have for the panelists about the application, about any of the resources that we have, or how to get in touch with us for more information? As much fun as it is to watch us on the screen, we'd really like to answer some questions.
Liz, since we're waiting for some questions, I might offer a point. David was talking about the value-added producer grant opportunities that come out periodically. And one way that you could use the subaward for this program is you could apply for funding to pay for a feasibility study. And that's an awesome opportunity there. And then once you have that, then you could take that feasibility study and then apply for the value-added producer grant working capital. You'll have a feasibility study to show, hopefully, that your idea is feasible. And that's a huge advantage when you're applying for a value-added producer grant, to have already documentation that your idea is feasible to go ahead and apply for working capital. So I just wanted to point that out, that's one way that people could really benefit from using this this grant to pay fully for a feasibility study.
Thanks, Hal. That's a really good point. Something else that I want to point out that I'm hoping was clear from our earlier conversations is that these dairy business innovation funds are not just for dairy cattle producers. So if you are a small ruminant dairy that does any kind of processing with your milk, and that is, permitted, you can also apply for these funds as well. So we have questions for flocks and herds. So it doesn't just have to be cows. It can be sheep and goats as well. Here in Tennessee, we are pretty lucky to have our Center for Profitable Ag as a huge resource for any of our value-added operations. Stephanie, you were talking about the y'all's Dairy Research Center. Is there anything else? I mean, that's a huge resource, but other than that, are there other resources that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I can I can reference or put in the chat maybe, or send you guys a link to we have our dairy extension portal, and which is just our dairy extension website. They call it a portal here. I think just because somebody must be a science fiction fan and likes the word portal better than website. But we have a team of folks that we work with pretty constantly between us and animal science and the food science department. And Carl Holofield is one of the resources there. He's the new director, new in title, but has been there for 15 years or so, of the Dairy Enterprise System, which is related to, but not officially part of necessarily, the Southeast Dairy Foods Research Center. So our system then is the farm that's making the milk, and then the plant in Schwab Hall that's making the ice cream, and then the sales stores on campus and on the farm itself now. And Carl has been a great resource for a lot of our farmers that have jumped into the value-added area in terms of, HACCP, in terms of plant design, all kinds of information. And he's pretty much an open book. So if anybody has questions, you're always welcome to reach out to him on those things. We also, out of our food science department, have a series of online courses that deal with, that are designed just for producers and industry folks, that deal with training in HACCP and food safety. We have some virtual tours of our dairy plant that are listed there. And those are put together and organized by Clint Stevenson, who's an extension specialist in the food science area there. And then Marianne Drake is also in our food science department. She's the director of the Southeast Dairy Foods Research Center. And the Dairy Foods Research Center is, and I'm not the expert on this, so don't hold me to all of this information, but basically is a organization that's partially industry supported, partially university supported, and they work directly with producers. They work directly with larger companies who are having any issues in terms of product development, quality control measures. Marianne is very well known for her ability to smell problems. We joke about that, that she has the best nose in this side of the Mississippi, in terms of figuring out if there are off flavors where those might be coming from. So that's another opportunity for troubleshooting there as well. I'm reading the chat questions, but I don't think I can answer any of those necessarily, except for maybe we're just starting in the value added, which step would you recommend first? And I can try and answer that, but you guys may have other thoughts about that. For us, when we've had that question come our way, we always refer producers their first step to our Department of Agriculture, the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, and the regulatory program there to make sure that they have the facilities and the right facilities in mind to, they know what the regulations and rules are going to be and what they're going to be tested by. That's the first step. And then the second step, and I'd probably call them 1A and 1B because they're kind of one step. We like to sit down with producers at that point and connect them with other folks that have, like Liz said, have already started this journey and been down it and know what the realities of it are. A lot of times it seems like a way to control your own prices. And right now in the dairy business, that is a real attractive thing to think about, is I can pay myself rather than relying on someone else to pay me. And for a lot of farms, that's helped them keep in business. But there's a lot of realities to opening your farm to the public. And that's something that you really have to think about first, is who's your client now and who's going to handle the business side and who's going to be your public face. Because you always think I'm going to have business hours and these are what they're going to be. And right as soon as you close down at 5 o'clock and you sit down for dinner with your family or whatever you're doing, somebody's going to pull up and want to see the cows that made this milk. And, there's all kinds of stories that we could all probably tell you about. So that farm there in the picture behind me, the city buildings you see is downtown Raleigh. So you can see how close we are. That's not photoshopped. We can actually see one of those buildings is BB&T and one of them is Google. So we're that close to the downtown city. Our internet's still horrible, by the way, but whatever. And on the other side of that picture, what you can't see is a neighborhood of about homes that start in the price range of $550,000 on a half acre. So when we opened up this creamery on the farm, the first question we got was, can we bring our dogs to the creamery? Can we ride our horses to the creamery? Are we able to bring our golf carts? Because people that live in that neighborhood behind us have golf carts and they want to know, could they drive their golf carts? This was in August, by the way, when we're cutting corn silage. And they want to know, could they drive their golf carts across the backside of the farm to come to the creamery? And the answer is absolutely not. These guys are driving dump trucks at 50 miles an hour through here. They'll never see you coming. But people just don't know. They don't know how a real farm works. And so those are just things that you have to kind of figure out and start dealing with. So I always say regulatory first, so you know what you're going to have to build up to. And then second is what's your public interface going to be.
Thanks, Stephanie. Jennifer, you want to give your thoughts on that question?
I kind of agree with Stephanie. It's definitely the regulatory portion would have to be considered first, because if you have an idea and it doesn't fit the regulatory standards, rules, or regulations, then you really can't go any further with it. So that would be my first thought and suggestion.
Thanks. Yeah. And mine would be the exact same. Anytime we get that question, whether it is sheep, goats, cattle, buffalo, whatever, first step is always going to be TDA, to talk to your regulatory. And we've got great staff in Tennessee. Danny Withers and Danny Sutton are very dedicated to our dairy farmers and dairy processing across the state of Tennessee, and so are all the regional guys. Depending on which area you're in, you're probably going to be working with Dan Hayes in the eastern region. I think it's Paul Wadham in central, or is it Charles Brannon in central? Kyle. Put Kyle on the spot.
I'm not even sure. I couldn't answer that question. Sorry. But I know they're all great. And I know
They're all great.
Dr. Morgan mentioned it this morning in his presentation about how important it was to talk to those guys. And I don't work directly with them. They're in a different division, but all of them really want to help. They don't want to be an enforcer of rules. They want to be somebody who helps you be compliant, is a good way to think about it.
Yeah. And then just like Stephanie said, call us. We would love to come out and sit down with you, see where you're at, walk around the operation, and talk shop and talk strategy. Now with COVID, that's a little bit more difficult, but we're happy to Zoom in and talk shop and talk strategy. You can give us a virtual tour of your area. And that's what we're here for. That is our job. That's what we enjoy doing. It's one of Hal and I's favorite things to do during the work week, is to go out and meet with all of you. The next question in the chat, and I'll try to take a stab at it. is there a systemic way to learn about producer processor needs and make linkages for problem solving for researchers? And mentioning that the Midwest Dairy Center holds annual meetings and industry and university folks come together to discuss challenges and needs. And my response to that is that's something in Tennessee that we have not done yet, but I think that that is a great opportunity with this grant to bring us all together and put us all in the same room and talk about strategies for the Southeast in general. Stephanie, you're pretty heavily involved with a discussion group of Southeast producers that does some of those things already. Maybe not with researchers, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I will say the Southeast Dairy Food Center also holds an annual meeting. I don't know if they advertise that outside of, they have, I think it's 2 days, and one day of it is for their board members and directors for planning, but I think the other day of it is usually open to the public, and that's usually in August. But of course, this year it was a COVID stopped it from being face-to-face, but they did carry on with a virtual meeting. So as far as like, I agree with Liz. I think there's an opportunity with this grant, but also just with the collaborations that are already forming here, for us to build some sort of network that would allow producers to ask their questions fairly directly. And we have, mainly I think because of our processing plant and the creamery, we get a lot of calls from farmers in that way, just sort of cold calls of people wanting to ask about, you know, something broke or something, you know, new technology out. So we kind of collate some of those questions along. Most of those questions are typically food science questions and processing questions. We don't get as many on the dairy side that are specific necessarily to value added. Although I will say, we have one example is just through our extension service. We've had some local cheesemakers who, you know, the quality of milk can change, especially if it's a grass-based dairy with seasonal changes, protein changes in the milk that affects the kind of cheese you can make. And that's become something that we're trying to focus on now, is figuring out what are those changes, how can we balance those a little bit. So that's one connection, but as far as a systematic way to do that, I don't think we have that yet.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, any other questions from y'all? We've had a couple about where to get resources. We've had a couple about involving multiple levels of stakeholders. Does that spark any comments from the rest of our panel? Made Stephanie, keep putting Stephanie on the spot. I do that a lot.
I guess I would put one out to the group along those same lines for the, you know, the producers that are on and are either doing this or interested in starting. What would be the best way for you to communicate with us? I mean, we have gotten what we feel like is fancy for us and use Google Forms and surveys. But, you know, a lot of people still don't use email consistently, or obviously we can make phone calls and that sort of stuff to try and gather information. But if there's a way that you guys feel like would be easy, something we could establish that you could send information to as needed, or, you know, that would be, I think, good for us to know as we go through with planning all these things, how you want that information delivered, or what's the easiest way for you to communicate with us.
Absolutely. And we really do want to hear from you. We're not just saying that to hear ourselves talk, because if we're not getting to you and you're not getting information back to us, we're kind of failing in our mission a little bit. So we really do want your input and know the best way to reach all of you. To that end, if it works for you, we do have an email list called Tennessee Dairy Discuss. Yes, Eunice, I stole the name from you in Kentucky Dairy Discuss. I give you full credit every time I talk about it. And Hal also has one for dairy businesses in Tennessee for value added. So if that's something that anyone from any state wants to be added to, it does not have to be state specific. but that's a way that we send out a lot of our blasts of information. At UT, we also have a UT Dairy Facebook page. We have a UT Dairy Instagram, and those are some other places that we post information if you're more on the social media side. And as I already mentioned, we have our website, which tends to go out along all of those other blasts. They always link back to the website. So the website for us is a good one-stop shop, and we will be having links there as well for our partner institutions. So we'll post things there if Stephanie lets us, going out to North Carolina, and same thing with Jennifer, out to any links for Kentucky Dairy Development Council or University of Kentucky if there are any that need to go there. So hopefully we'll be able to put it all in one good spot for you to just go hunting for information. They don't want to ask us questions today, guys. That chat's awfully quiet.
Might mention another thing that some educational training that's going to result as a part of this project. We're going to be doing some market ready training for dairy. Kentucky is really the source of that information for market ready, specifically tailored to selling to restaurants and other wholesale outlets, grocery stores, etc. But they've not developed anything specifically for dairy products. But in the next year or so, we're going to be developing those materials, or actually Kentucky's going to be, and we'll be collaborating with them on that. So we'll be having a number of workshops on market ready for dairy products, I'd say, in a year from now, in these three states. Also Penn State, we're collaborating with them. They're going to be developing some online modules about milk processing rules and regulations and marketing of those products. We'll be having some marketing workshops that Penn State will be the main speaker for those. We'll be having some annual conferences, and Liz may want to say some more about that in Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina. And of course the benchmarking, the dairy gauge efforts. So all of these are parts of this project. So the primary focus is to assist folks who want to do some type of milk processing, whether it's small ruminants or cows, but also that dairy gauge project is going to benefit not just those who are processing, but also those who maybe want to consider processing, but also just want to get a better sense of where they are financially with their dairy production enterprises. So I'm really excited to be partnering with all these folks on these activities. Thanks for letting me put that plug in, Liz.
No, thank you, Hal, absolutely. And I'll defer to Jennifer on the dates for our next annual conference, because that's actually going to be in Kentucky. So we'll be bouncing around between the states for the next couple of years.
We're in the middle of July.
Jennifer, your speaker hates you.
All right, everybody's gonna see me up close and personal, but all right, our date is set for the middle of July. Tentatively is what we are looking at. We will have that information confirmed after the first of the year for the exact date. Anyone that is interested can either jump on our Facebook page, which is KDDC, Kentucky Dairy Development Council, or check with our website, which is www.kentuckydairy.org. And we will have those listed. And if I could, I know there's several Kentucky's producers on here, I think. So if I could just go over kind of the structure of the grant as far as Kentucky goes, which, like you said, our annual, we'll have an annual conference in July of 2021. But going back to the dairy gauge, we will be having 4 workshop series, one in each of the consultants area across the state for the duration of the 30 years. And then we will also be having a 1-day annual meeting each of the 30 years, and that will concentrate solely on the feasibility, business plans, cash flow statements, that type of information. I'm trying to think what else. KDDC also has an opportunity to work on another grant that kind of plays along with value added too. So we have that available, and we'll have educational opportunities provided through that coming up. I think that's about it.
Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, do y'all have any kind of tentative schedule for workshops and meetings and things like that in your area yet?
We don't right now. We are campus bound is the best way to put it.
Yep. Nope. I completely understand.
We currently have a statewide curfew at 10 o'clock. So we,
That's fancy.
yeah, it's, you know, it is what it is. We are hoping this thing gets handled and out of here pretty quick. But yeah, I would say we'll probably revisit our schedule and extension programming in January. We're just sort of waiting to figure out what our face-to-face options are going to be.
And y'all, unfortunately, that's true for all of us this year with the way that COVID's impacting us all, i.e. our virtual value-added workshop, which we are so glad that so many of you are here for. But just kind of bear with us as schedules come out, and there may be some last-minute changes and last-minute locations just because we're trying to deal with COVID. Our crystal balls don't work either. Are there any last-minute comments, thoughts, things that we haven't covered, Hal, that we need to cover? I defer to the original leader.
I think you've covered it pretty well. It may have been mentioned somewhere along the way, but Kentucky's got that awesome resource of K-Card that can really assist in doing feasibility and planning and as you develop a business plan, a marketing plan. So I know our Kentucky friends will want to make sure and make use of those resources. But our intention is to dovetail as many of these resources as we can to help these producers who want to consider a value-added processing activity. It's not easy, it's complicated, and we want to do whatever we can to help anyone that wants to look at this to be successful. And sometimes it means taking a look at this and recognizing that, you know, maybe the opportunity for success isn't there. And so if we steer someone away from doing something that would have failed or cost them a lot of money, then we feel like that's a success as well. So we're fortunate to be partnering with Kentucky and North Carolina, and we hope that all of the producers in these states and even the surrounding states can benefit from this collaboration and from the educational resources that result from this project.
So with that, thank you, everyone.